See, there's something within us that wants to leave a legacy. But here's the thing you need to know is if God asks you to do something, don't look at the size of the job, look at the size of your God who asked you to do it. See, he laid down his life for you, so that tells me that you are not worthless, you are worthy. And this is what he wants to rewrite into your story. That reality impacts everything. Welcome everyone to week 1 of a short little 2-week series called Stumbling Toward Perfection. This series, I'm just so excited about it because it really will help us just discuss how in the world we do life when we don't feel like we always measure up. When sometimes we feel like I made a mistake, I blew it, and yet the Lord's calling me to righteous living and holiness and things like that. And so how do these things balance together? You know, I'm, as many of you guys know, I'm on a gluten-free diet and I try my best to be gluten-free. But like this last week, I was down in Illinois. I was networking with some pastors and then with my staff at a conference. And while we were there, sure enough, day 1, we're having lunch. And as we're having lunch, out comes Chick-fil-A, you know, fried chicken in a bun, and I'm sitting there going, I guess I'm not going to be gluten-free today. Now for me, I'm not going to like swell up and stop breathing if I eat gluten, but for me, I'll feel it in my joints, I'll hurt a little bit and that type of thing. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to eat the gluten. I'm going to eat the Chick-fil-A, and it was awesome, and I loved it. It was so good. So then the next day, the staff came on down and joined us at the conference, and then we go out to Luminati's. Now, if you've ever had Luminati's, you know that is like some of the best pizza in the world. And you don't go there and have pizza on a gluten-free crust. So sure enough, we're getting ready to order. I was like, I'll eat whatever everyone orders. And people, they initially, they're like, hold on, aren't you gluten-free? And I'm like, well, I'm not today. I broke it yesterday, so I'll break it today. And immediately, it's so easy for people to be like, you hypocrite, I thought you were gluten-free. And here's what I think so often happens in our faith even. We feel like I'm afraid to say, this is my goal in my faith journey, or this is what I'm afraid, or this is what I want to do in my walk with God. Because what if I don't hit it? Will everyone say, you hypocrite? I thought you were this. I thought you were going to claim to be that. And so even for all of us in our walks with God, I think sometimes what can happen is we can say, I don't want to tell my wife I want to pray with her. Or I don't want to tell my wife, I think we should tithe. Or I don't want to tell my small group, I think I need accountability because I want to read my Bible every single day. Because as soon as it comes out of your mouth, now there's accountability to it. Now all of a sudden, someone can ask you, hey, are you doing that? And we often have this fear of failure. And it's this idea of, I don't want to stumble. If I want to do this, I want to do it right, and I don't want to be someone who would defame Christ or be, as a Christian, missing the mark. And yet, as a Christian, that's so often the journey we're on. While we are on this journey to be holy as Christ is holy, and He's going to help us to walk more obediently with Him day by day, the reality is you're going to stumble and I'm going to stumble. The worst thing we can do, though, is not take the first step because we're afraid of the stumble. This week during the message, I talked about the woman at the well. This woman, she was a woman who had lived a life in rebellion to God. And quite frankly, Jesus calls her out on it. Now, the amazing thing just about the whole story is that she doesn't go home and get her entire life in order before she goes and tells people about the one that she's putting her faith in, the one that she's saying, I believe this guy's the Messiah. No, immediately she goes and she says, I think I found the Messiah. I'm believing that He is the Messiah. She doesn't get her life all figured out. She doesn't say, I'm never going to stumble again, but she just goes for it and starts talking about her faith in this guy named Jesus. And I think a lot of us have something to learn from her, where instead of saying, I've got to get everything right perfectly in my life before I'll follow Jesus, or before I'm going to talk about my faith or what I want to do to grow in my faith, I think for many of us, we need to just take that first leap of faith. Take that first step. And when someone might say, if you mess up and they're like, I knew it, you made a mistake, you hypocrite, that instead of just buying that idea that, oh, I failed, I'm a loser, I should never do this Christian walk thing again, no, to instead say, I will stumble, but I am stumbling toward perfection. I'm stumbling with Jesus in my journey, and in that, He's going to help me walk more obediently day by day. This week, there were a handful of people who demonstrated that they are followers of Jesus. They might still be stumbling toward perfection, but they are taking the step to profess their faith to everyone, and they did it through baptism. And just kind of showing everyone, hey, I'm not kicking the tires anymore in my faith. I'm declaring this, that I love Jesus. I've surrendered my life to Him. In your small groups, there might be some of you who are still kind of on the fence about baptism. I think it would just be fun. Maybe right there in your small groups, just share your baptism story. Why in the world did you get baptized? Maybe if you haven't, why haven't you up to this point? I also want to challenge you to speak something out loud that perhaps you feel is a next step of obedience in your journey, in your life. It might be praying with your spouse. It might be reading your Bible daily. It might be freedom from an addiction or from a hurdle or a bad habit that you're daily facing. It could be going on a missions trip or serving in some area of ministry. But you've been afraid to say it because as soon as you say it, what if you don't do it? Will you fail? And I think it's really important that we just embrace the reality that we're stumbling, and when there will be times that we stumble, but with Christ's help, He's going to help us actually be successful in the journey with Him. And so while we might be stumbling toward perfection, that's an okay thing. And so go ahead and just dive into a conversation now about how you might be stumbling, but you're going to speak out loud where you want to go in your journey with Jesus. Have a great conversation. We'll talk to you guys next week.